Oh, happy Wednesday or whatever day it is when you're watching this. My name's Keith. Hey Pat, I am the meditation teacher on this channel, Meditation Breaks. And if you are here, chances are you have even a minor interest in learning or continuing to learn about meditation. So that's what we do on this channel. And every week we'll start with the basics, like what is meditation, how do I do it, all that stuff you might be asking if you're new. And then we get into a topic, and these topics are always related to meditation and ways we can start to incorporate the different benefits of meditation into our daily life, right? So kind of viewing meditation in a practical way, because sometimes I think can be presented in a way that feels like, well, that's like not for me. I'd be like a spiritual guru or something like that. But really, what we're doing here is we're thinking, right? We're using our mind purposely. So we'll talk a little bit about that. If you are new, hey Gail and Jim, hey, if you are new, please do use the chat if you have any questions. That's the best way to get a question answered. Maybe something didn't connect when I was speaking, or you have some experience you want to share, or a comment, whatever. Using the chat is the best way to get my attention. And you don't need to wait for me to say, anyone have any questions? You just go ahead and type it in there, and I'll do my best to keep track of it. If you don't feel comfortable using that feature, or you are like me and always forget what you're like, oh, I should have asked this. You think about it like an hour later. I'm going to give everyone my email later in the session, and you can email me whenever you want at any time. Hey, Patricia. Okay, so we're going to get started by kind of taking a very general look at what meditation is. Hello, Rob. Meditation, when we think of this word, almost instantly we have this kind of what I'll call like a generic image, basically what our mind thinks meditation is, right? And we all kind of have a similar one, I would venture to guess, and that's somebody sitting on the floor like this with their legs crossed, in a position that they look very relaxed. Whenever I try that, my back hurts. But that's our image of meditation, right? If you Googled meditation, that's what would come up. This is a way to meditate. You can meditate in the seated position, cross-legged, arms like this, eyes closed. But that is just a seating position, right? Just orienting your body in a specific way, deciding to close your eyes. That is not a prerequisite for meditation. So if that thing is kind of meditation, but not the real definition, then what is? So the definition that I like to use is meditation is a technique that you can utilize to become really familiar with something. Which, that's a weird kind of phrase, right? We don't go around thinking, hey, Lucia, I'm doing well. Hope you are too. We don't go around thinking, hey, I'm going to familiarize my mind with how to, I don't know, build a birdhouse. I didn't do that. I don't know. It just came to my mind, right? We don't think like, I'm going to go familiarize my mind with that. We're like, I'm going to just do it. I'm going to learn. We don't say I'm going to familiarize my mind, but it's learning. That's what our mind is doing. Everything that we have learned up until this point in our life right now, and even now, is utilizing this kind of superpower we have of familiarity, right? So if you think about something you're super familiar with, I often use tying your shoe, but I use it all the time. I just had the weirdest one. I don't know why I thought of this, but making ice. Why did I think of it? It's so weird, the little ice trays. The first, when you're a little kid, you don't know what that is. You probably thought it was like a hat or something. You're like, what is this thing, right? But like now we see that, we're like, oh, that's an ice tray instantaneously. We know how to exactly the functionality that we need to make ice. We know we don't want to fill it up too much because then it's spilling over. Like all of these little things we know. We're super familiar with it. And so when, somebody asks you, hey, could you go make that tray of ice, which I don't know, it's the weirdest analogy. You don't have to concentrate. All right. You could probably do it while doing a million other things because you're so familiar with it. Same with riding a bike, whatever language you speak. All right. If you learn a new one, at first language incredibly difficult. Now you can do it without really thinking about it. So this is the output of familiarity. The more familiar you are with something, the less energy, effort, concentration you have to put into it coming to you, right? If you want to use kind of like, second nature type of a thing, that's exactly what we're after, right? And this is, in my opinion, one of the coolest things about being a human, because we can choose what we want to be familiar with. It might not feel like that all the time, but we can choose because we weren't born, having an anxiety about this, right? It's learned. All of the things that are come to us very naturally, good and bad, they are learned behaviors. And that's a really cool thing to recognize that you have control over. And so that is meditation. Meditation is, it's not the only way to do this. It's just a really good technique at starting to choose what you want your mind to be familiar with. So let's talk about relaxing, because that's why most people get into meditation. People usually like, meditation relaxes me. When I meditate, I am relaxed. Meditation is not relaxing. Sorry, meditation. What it's doing is it's teaching you to become super familiar with relaxed you. You're already relaxed. It's in there. You know it. It might not show up as much as you want, but it's not a version of you that doesn't exist. You've seen it. And so meditation teaches you to become so familiar with that. If this is what you want to use meditation for, you can become so familiar with relaxed you that what happens? Just like learning a language, riding a bike, you don't have to spend as much time to do it, right? It starts to come more naturally. You could say calmness or whatever is starting to become your default state, whereas maybe before it's a little like kind of on edge, right? So this is meditation, and it sounds great, I'm sure, but like, how do we actually go and do this? And today's going to be a really good class for people if you're new, because we're going to talk about 3 different types of breathing meditation, and breathing meditation is usually the foray into different types of meditation. It's usually the first one people learn, and our topic for today is going to be focusing on a bunch of different types, because every one of us is different. We're a different learner, and we connect with different things. And what we want to do is kind of really find what works for us. They're all these things we'll talk about are equally as, potent or whatever, beneficial. It's just a matter of finding what kind of style works for you. So we are going to do some breathing meditation today. And you've probably heard of that phrase, thing, activity. It's a meditation on your breath. And all that means is the object of our meditation, the focal point of our meditation is our breath. So when you meditate, we're picking something and focusing on it single-pointedly. Single-pointed concentration, it's called. And using the breath is one thing we can use. It doesn't have to be. It could be walking, scratching your head like I just did. You could meditate on anything, but breath is a really good starting point. We'll talk a little bit about that later too, why. But what we're going to be doing is choosing to focus on our breath so exclusively that all those other things that are normally bouncing around our head, oh, I got to do that thing for work tomorrow, or oh, what was that sound, or oh, my knee hurts. All those things that are constantly bombarding our mind all day long. There's not going to be as much room for them because so much room in our mind is being dedicated to focusing on our breath. And a natural byproduct of that is, since there's not as much room, they kind of fade into the background, right? We don't notice them as much. They're not as apparent. Right? And so this is kind of when people say like, oh, meditation relaxes me. This is usually this kind of first experience with that, is pacifying some of the busyness in our mind. And then, your mind stops juggling a million bowling pins and suddenly it can chill a little bit. So we're going to learn how to do this. And the first type of breathing meditation we're going to do is sensory based, and I'll talk more about that when we get into our topic. But it's pretty straightforward breathing meditation style. 3 steps. 1, we choose to do this. Sounds lame, sounds weird, unnecessary, whatever. I thought so too. But choosing to do this is really important because we have meditative experiences, right? Working on something diligently at work, we lose track of time, right? All those things, the noises of the office, the things that are busy in our mind, there's no room for them when we're super concentrated. So we've had experiences like this, but we want to start to teach our mind that this is something we can choose to do, not something that it chooses for us, if that makes sense. So we're just going to set a little intention. All that means is you're going to just say to yourself, for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to focus single pointedly on my breath to the best of my ability. That's it. Right? Even if you're not really believe in it, we just kind of plant that thought in our mind. And then we're going to, step 2, go ahead and do that. I'm going to be leading the meditation. And while I'm leading the meditation, whenever you notice that you're no longer exclusively focused on your breath, what do I mean by that? Even just slightly, like, oh, it was a sound I heard, right? That is you no longer technically being exclusively focused on your breath, right? This is not a bad thing. Our mind does this, right? The thing you want to pay attention to is whenever you notice that you are doing that, be it sound or something you're thinking about that you got to do tomorrow or this weekend or whatever, we're just going to say not right now to those thoughts. That's our little saying here. Those thoughts are just thoughts. They are not bad, intrusive. They're not annoying, whatever. They are just thoughts, but not now. We are in control of our mind, and we're saying, mind, I'll get to these later. And then we bring our attention back to our breath. That's the 3rd step. So choose to focus single pointedly on your breath. Notice when your attention drifts, bring your attention back. It's like a little loop that we're going to do, right? I'm also glad. That's a really beautiful way of putting it. So that's wonderful. Yeah, it is. And you actually bring up a really interesting point, is we often feel like this is a waste of time because our mind doesn't naturally always see the value in focusing on one thing. Why? Because 99.9999999% of the time, we are asking our mind to multitask, right? Even just now, I hit my microphone, then I lowered it while still speaking. I'm asking my mind to multitask, right? Even, when we don't think we are, we are. And so this is our mind's default. And so when we say, hey, whoa, mind, we're going to focus on one thing, it's like, why? Right? We're kind of conditioned to feel like this focusing on one thing is not productive or whatnot. Yeah. So this is kind of a hurdle we have to get over to realize that this is beneficial, right? And start to see some of the benefits of that. Rob, I find relaxing via meditation challenging, as I'm challenging the natural stress I need to keep up with my life. Yes. So this is part of this journey, right? Because we're conditioned to feel like what we're doing here today, spending 45 to minutes to an hour talking about and meditating, literally focusing on our breath, in the like, societal, view, this is, we're not producing it. We're not, there's no production here. Right? But what we are doing is producing something incredibly valuable. And that is understanding how our own mind works, starting to realize how we tick, starting to understand some of the subtleties of what comes along with living, right? And so that's a very natural response, is to kind of feel like, oh, like, is this like worth my time? Like, this kind of thing. And I can't tell you, you figure it out for yourself. But that's just been my experience with it. And I certainly, went through a lot of those feelings as well. Okay, let's do some breathing meditation. You'll notice I am not on the floor. My back hurts, so I'm not sitting on the floor. You do not need to sit on the floor to meditate. I'm in an office chair. You don't need to be in an office chair either. You can be on the couch. You want to lay down? Cool. Do whatever you want. There is no mandatory seating position meditation, at least in my opinion. That would be kind of not great, right? Because then if we could only meditate when we're sitting cross-legged, what if we can't sit cross-legged? Can't meditate. So luckily, you can sit however you like. So pick a relatively comfortable seating position, and you can go ahead and close your eyes, and I'm going to guide us through about a 5-minute breathing meditation. Okay. Whenever you start a meditation, take a moment and check in with yourself. Actually ask, how am I feeling right now? In this exact moment. Maybe you're tired. It's been a long day. Maybe you're energetic, excited, happy, melancholy. Whatever it is fine. There is no right or wrong. We're not doing anything about it. We're just noticing. Practicing, actively choosing to notice what your mind is up to. It's a technique called mindfulness. So take a moment and check in. Having done that, you can now set an intention for yourself, a little promise. And that promise is to focus single pointedly, exclusively on your own breath to the best of your ability for the next few minutes. That's it. That's your only job, your only task. Allow that intention, that promise to yourself, to sit in your mind. And then with that intention set, you can act on it, turning your full undivided attention to your own breath, breathing in, breathing out, very gently and very naturally. There's no reason to alter the way you normally breathe here. You don't need to take big, deep inhales or forcefully exhale air. However you normally breathe is perfect. In and out. Allow yourself to relax into your seat a little bit as you breathe. At some point while you're doing this, sometimes rather quickly, you may notice that your attention is splitting time drifting a bit. It's no longer exclusively focused on your breath. Whenever you notice that your mind is doing this, maybe it's thinking about what you have to do later or something that happened earlier, we can just say, not right now to these thoughts. We'll get to them later. You can imagine yourself taking those thoughts, placing them beside you. And with those thoughts placed beside you, waiting, you can actively turn your attention back to breathing in and out, very gently, very naturally. Single pointedly focused on each moment of each breath. Breathing in, breathing out, gently, naturally. We don't often think about what breathing feels like. We just do it. We are so familiar with breathing that it is quite an afterthought for us for most of the day. But there are some really interesting subtleties to breathing, things that are always there, waiting for us to notice them. Things that begin to answer the question, what does breathing feel like? A deeper understanding, familiarity with this incredibly important and wonderful bodily function. As you are single pointedly focusing on your breath, maybe you start to notice some of these subtleties. Perhaps how the air feels cool on the tip of your nose every time you breathe in. You can feel the coolness. And that same air that was once cool, when you breathe out, oh, it's a bit warmer, isn't it? How interesting. Maybe you notice your body participating in your breath, your shoulders rising every time you breathe in, and those same shoulders falling every time you breathe out. Your chest expanding to make room for your breath when you inhale. And contracting when you exhale. Your entire body, an active participant in each moment of each breath. How interesting. These subtleties illuminate some very subtle joys about breathing. You're starting to find some interest, subtle joys in something as simple as focusing on your own breath. How incredible is that? That you can find joy in breathing in, breathing out, gently, naturally. Just for the last few moments here, just continue to breathe and think about that question. What does breathing feel like? Whatever comes to you, just sit with it and enjoy this quiet time. You deserve it. Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Hello. Congratulations. You are a meditator. So that is breathing meditation. What did we do? 3 steps. We chose to focus on our breath. We did that to the best of our ability, noticing when our attention drifted. When it did, we're like, get to you later. And then we bring our attention back. Right? So this kind of loop, those 3 steps, is the same no matter what style breathing meditation we're doing, or even if we're doing a meditation that's not on our breath. You can meditate on ideas, concepts. We kind of were doing that a little bit, right? Towards the end, like, what does breathing feel like? Right? We start to meditate on this more abstract view of breath rather than, in and out in like a physical sense, right? So if that was difficult, welcome to the club. Often we feel like, oh, I got distracted. I guess I didn't do it right, or doing like didn't do it well, or whatever. Oh, me too, Antonio. That's so kind. That's not the goal here, right? The goal with meditation is to practice, right? Thoughts are thoughts. Our mind thinks, thankfully, right? That's what we want our mind to think. What we want to start to train our mind to do is to think about the things that we want to think about, or when an idea kind of comes to us, we're able to determine, is that what I want to place my focus on right now? So a little bit more ownership, right? And that just comes with practice, right? And the more you do this, the more normalized this becomes, the more familiar you are with this activity, and you can settle in, right? You don't have to think as much about it. Okay? Cool. So this class this week, whatever, are going to look at different types of breathing meditation, or different styles. And the goal here is you want to find your breath. And it's like a weird phrase because you're like, well, I'm breathing. I got it. I found it. Ooh, yeah. Like what I mean by finding your breath is like finding how you can start to tap into those subtleties that we were talking about in the meditation. Like what allows you to get there. Right? And this will take time. I mean, maybe none of these are easy, right? I wouldn't doubt it. They're not easy for me either. And I've been doing this, a really, really long time. Because this is not something that is naturally taught to us. So it takes some time. So that is our goal for today, is to find your breath. That's your goal, right? And since we're going to be focusing on breathing so much, I wanted to just take a very brief, a couple of moments to talk about why breathing meditation is kind of so regularly used. And these are just my thoughts on it. I mean, there's probably countless. The first is that your breath is always with you, right? I mean, if it wasn't, we got problems. So this is a really important aspect of meditation, because we often think, well, in order for me to meditate, I need to be in perfect silence, or I need to be at this lake that's 10 minutes from my house that's very serene. Or like, more extreme, like I have to go on a retreat for months. No, you don't have to do any of that. Right? All you need is your breath. If you can start to recognize that, well, what starts to happen? You feel empowered that you can use this in any situation, which is really important, right? And this kind of bleeds into the next point. Is there's kind of like a non-attachment to our breath. Attachment in meditation speak is when we feel like we need something in order to accomplish X, Y, Z, or to be happy, or like something like that, right? Person, situation, idea, feeling. And our breath, it's like we're so it's just kind of in the background, right? There's like a non-attachment here, right? I mean, if we think about it, we're like, whoa, I really need it. But we don't, that's not a thought that's coming up to us like on a normal day. And this is another really important aspect of meditation is, tying into this same idea that we don't need special external circumstances to do this, right? Also, I think breath's cool because it's I don't know if this is the right way to, I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but it's like very tangible. Like I can find my breath, I'm doing it right now. I'm breathing, but it's not visible. And we are very see it to believe it kind of people, right? And so when we start to see some benefits of meditating on our breath, well, that's kind of cool because there's this thing that is tangible. Like we can connect with it, but like not in a very tactile way, right? So this starts to illuminate some of the benefits of focusing on even these like kind of more esoteric type of thoughts or ideas, right? So we are going to do some breathing meditation, and there are 3 types we're going to talk about: sensory, counting, and imagery. Great news. You already did the first one, sensory. That's what we did in our meditation that we just finished, right? And so each of these is equally beneficial. None is more potent than the other. It is just preference, or maybe you like a bunch of them and you try different stuff, right? This is just to help you find something that you feel comfortable with, right? So in sensory, what we just did is we start to take breathing, this like physical, in and out breathing mechanism, and we start to think about it in a kind of a way that we normally don't. And I like to use the example of, if I were to ask you, hey, can you tell me how to drive a car? And you'd be like, okay, well, here, step 1 is here's the brake. That's really important, and then the gas, that makes you go forward. And then you got your mirrors. Like, I mean, you'd tell me, and there's countless buttons and stuff in a car, and yet you could tell me how to drive a car. You could explain that to me. If I were to ask you, what does driving feel like? Well, this is a little harder to answer. We know it, right? You know what driving feels like, but it's hard to communicate it. It's hard to put it into words, right? Like, how do I even describe that? Is it like fast? Like it's hard. You have to think about it. It doesn't come as naturally. So the first one, how do I drive, is like an intellectual understanding of driving. what does driving feel like is an experiential understanding. And those two things, if we combine them, that is a path to a very deep familiarity with the thing. Example, you can drive without really thinking about it, right? You got to think a little, but it's starting to come natural to you. So this is sensory is really good at this because it's posing this question: what does this thing I'm focusing on feel like? Right? What more than just it's in like a physical sense. Sometimes this type of breathing meditation can lead us to our mind wandering, and I'm a bit of a mind wanderer myself. And so I very much like sensory, but there are times where, like, I start drifting. I'm like, wait, what the heck was I supposed to be focusing on? Now I'm thinking about driving or whatever. So if that is an experience that you have, maybe we try one of these other ones, right? Not to say that you shouldn't try all of them, just that there are some things to take into account if you're going to sit down and meditate. Like, what's your mind like? And that's why we do the check-in, right? If your mind is very wandering-esque, strange word, maybe we try something like counting, right? So counting is the one we're going to do right now. And counting meditation, very similar, like, fundamentally to what we just did, but we're going to give our mind a very specific job. Instead of being like, hey, mind, think about what breathing feels like, we're going to be like, mind, you're counting your breaths, right? We're giving our mind a job. So if you're somebody who likes, structure, I want to do this and then this and then this, counting meditation can be really good. Also incredibly good if you're anxious, because when we're anxious, our mind is kind of like, yeah, meditate. No, think about that thing. So we have to give our mind a job. It helps focus us. Okay. So we're going to do that now. And instructionally, it's almost identical, but we're going to count our breaths. And by that, I mean, every time you breathe in and out, you're going to say 1, and then 2, and then 3. You don't have to say it out loud. You can if you want. Doesn't matter. And whenever you notice that you're not sure what number you're on, or you're like, wait, was it 2? I think it was 2. Whenever that happens, whatever, we start over at 1. So it's the same concept. When we notice our mind drifting from the thing we're focusing on, we are saying not right now and bringing it back, but we're it's a little bit more structured in terms of how we're going about doing this. Does that make sense? Hope so. Okay, so we're going to do some counting meditation. Get comfy. Go ahead and close your eyes. Take a moment and check in once again. What's your mind up to? Not a comparison. Before is done. Just now. That's our only focus. And we can set another intention to count our breaths for the next few minutes. And with that intention firmly in our mind, we can act on it. You can start breathing in and out gently, naturally. And each time you do, you're going to count. In and out, 1. In and out, 2. Just keep counting your breaths. At some point, you may hesitate when trying to think about what number you were on. Maybe your mind has been drifting a bit. No big deal. We can just say not right now to those thoughts and then turn our attention back to counting, starting again at 1. In and out, gently, naturally. And just check in again. Where's your mind? Is it drifting? If so, no big deal. We can just start again. In and out. 1. In and out. 2. And check in again. If you need to, start your count over. Okay. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Great job counting. Counting meditation. Literally the same thing, just a different style, right? A lot of times, this can be an easier entry point in terms of like style of breathing meditation because we're very used to jobs. Our mind likes jobs. And so this can be really helpful if we're finding ourselves drifting a lot when we meditate, right? The third we're going to talk about, and then we'll do a very short one on that to close out today, is imagery, right? So your mind is very cool, right? Because your mind can explore even without your body, right? So if I were to ask you, how long would it take you to go to the moon if you left right now? You'd be like, hey, well, I don't know. I need a rocket ship first. That's going to take some time. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out how to build that, right? Like it would probably take you quite some time, figure out how to do that. But you can go to the moon in your mind. If you close your eyes, you can picture the moon, right? You can, when you're dreaming, right, is a really good example of this. When we're dreaming, we can experience places in fascinating detail we have never been, right? So your mind has an amazing ability to craft imagery, to craft situations for you to analyze, right? And this is, this type of meditation can get very deep because we can start to analyze like thought situations using imagery. What we're going to do is use this kind of technique, imagery, to as like a basis for our breathing meditation, right? And so what this meditation will be is we're going to imagine that Whenever we breathe out, we're going to use our imagination and imagine that we are breathing out like a dark smoke, whatever that looks like to you. We're breathing it out. And that's all of our stress. That's all of our anxieties. That's all those thoughts that we want to just place to the side. Dark smoke when we breathe out. When we breathe in, we're imagining we're breathing in like a kind of warmth or white light, right? Whatever that means to you, whatever that comes to you. And that we're breathing in is joy, happiness, peacefulness, all those things that we want, right? And so what we're doing here is the exact same thing as with sensory and counting meditation. We're choosing to focus on our breath, noticing when our attention drifts, bringing it back. But what we're doing is bringing it back to this kind of imagery of breathing out dark smoke, breathing in white light. Does that make sense? Cool. Let's do it. All right. I know this has been a lot of meditations. Usually we only do 2, but this is the old hat trick of meditations. Okay. Get comfy. Go ahead and close your eyes. And let's do some imagery meditation. Once again, take a moment and check in with yourself. How are you feeling in this exact moment? What's your mind up to? Just notice. That's all. And having checked in, we can set that same intention that we have been allowing our mind to bask in for the last hour. That intention of choosing to focus single pointedly on your own breath to the best of your ability. And then with that intention set, that promise, once again, sitting in our mind, we can act on it. We can turn our attention, our undivided attention, to breathing in and breathing out very gently, very naturally. Only this time, we're going to layer on some imagery to help us connect and find our breath. Every time you exhale, every time you breathe out, I want you to imagine that you are breathing out a dark smoke. Picture it. Really use your imagination. What does that dark smoke look like as it leaves your body and dissipates into the atmosphere? Breathing out dark smoke. This dark smoke is a conglomerate of all of our worries and stress. And we're releasing it. Breathing out dark smoke. And every time you breathe in, every time you inhale, I want you to imagine that you are inhaling warmth, white light, peacefulness, whatever imagery comes to mind for you. Calmness, happiness, that's what we're breathing in the form of a white light or warmth, sunlight. Just imagine that warmth, that white light is entering your body, Every time you breathe in, it is filling your mind and heart with joy, peacefulness, kindness. You get to relax. Breathing in white light. And so for the last few moments, continue to breathe in white light filled with peacefulness and joy, and then breathe out dark smoke comprised of all your stress and worries. Breathing in white light and breathing out dark smoke. Gently, naturally. Okay. And whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes. There it is. We've used our imagination. Once again, the sentiment, the process of this activity, meditating on our breath, it's the same. We're choosing to do this. Whenever we notice we're not doing it, we're bringing our attention back to that thing. Just layered on a little imagery, whereas counting we layered on kind of like giving our mind a job. And sensory, we layer on exploration, like this idea of feeling, sensory based. There are countless more. These are just three that I think are probably the most common. And I find that most people connect with one of them. If you were like, hey, the counting one went better for me, stick with that for a little while, right? That isn't to say that you should never do these other ones, because they are really all great for different things. And they are all equally beneficial, and they're all working towards the same goal of making this process of choosing to focus single pointedly on something, noticing when you're not, bringing your attention back, making that more normalized, right? So you stick with one that connects with you. Amazing, right? And then when you start to get a little bit more familiar with that, that starts to feel good. Maybe, I'll try the sensory one again, or I'll do the old white and light dark smoke meditation. So that's it for today. I hope you found this class to be enjoyable or thought-provoking or all of the above. Love to have more options to choose from depending on my mood. Yeah. And that, Lucia, that's a really, like, that's like what this is all about. We're learning tools, self-help tools, and paying attention to your mind to know when you need to use them is really powerful, right? If you're like, hey, I'm a little anxious, maybe I'll do counting. That's great, Oh, Gail, thank you. Yeah, I that means a lot to me, actually, Gail, because that's kind of my goal. I think sometimes it feels more complex than it is, but we're all meditators, we're all meditators. Okay, so thank you for being here. Thank you to anyone who subscribed to the channel during the session, or anyone who chooses to do so after. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I appreciate your support. If you have a question on meditation as you're doing this on your own, or you're like, hey, this is pretty cool, I'd like to do a private session with Keith to focus on something that's very important to me, perhaps anxiety or something like that, we can do that. I do them all virtually. It's pretty laid back. I'm a pretty chill person. Thank you, Shelley, Pat, Mercedes. Thank you, Rosa. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It is keith@meditationbreaks.com. keith@meditationbreaks.com. That is my email. There you go. You can email me if you're interested in one-on-one, or just like have a question, or just want to say hi. Hi. And lastly, just a big thank you to everyone for being here. I love teaching, and I could not do that without you taking time out of your very busy day to spend an hour with me, some random person. So a lot of gratitude from me to you. Really, really meaningful to have all you guys here spending time with me. So thank you. The counting one may be useful when one's angry. Yes, very good. Yeah, so anxiety, anger, like these like very potent mental states, the counting one is awesome because our mind is like, no, I got to think about that thing. And we're like, no, you have a job, mind. Counting. Beautiful. Well said. Okay, that's it. Have a great week. I'll see y'all next week, same time and day. All right. And once again, thanks for all your support. Really means a lot to me. Thank you. Take care.